You ever notice how the loudest people in the room get admired, but the quiet ones get analyzed? She's so antisocial. He never comes out. They're always at home. Let me ask you something. What if the person who keeps canceling plans isn't flaky? What if they're exhausted from surviving a world that feels too loud? What if staying home isn't avoidance? What if it's intelligence? Because here's the truth nobody says out loud. Some people don't hate people. They just experience people. Intensely. And if you've ever felt your energy drop in the middle of a party for no clear reason, if you've ever needed 2 days to recover from a fun night, if your favorite sound is silence, stay with me. You're not boring. You're not broken. And you're definitely not alone. But there is one uncomfortable question we're going to answer by the end of this video. Are you staying home because it fills you, or because you're hiding? We'll come back to that. First, we need to understand something most people misunderstand about personality. There's this idea that extroverts are confident and introverts are shy. That's not accurate. Extroversion and introversion are about stimulation. Research in personality psychology, going back to Hans Eysenck, suggests that introverts tend to have higher baseline cortical arousal. In simple terms, their brains are already more stimulated at rest. So when they enter a loud, bright, socially demanding environment, their nervous system hits overload faster. What feels exciting to someone else can feel overwhelming to them. It's not fear. It's not insecurity. It's threshold. There's something deeply unfair about calling someone boring for protecting their threshold. Because if you think about it, we don't shame people for needing sleep. We don't shame people for getting hungry. But we shame people for needing quiet. Why? Optimal arousal theory explains this even further. Every human has a stimulation sweet spot, a level where they function best. Too little stimulation and you feel restless. Too much and you feel stressed. Some people's sweet spot is high. Some people's sweet spot is low. Neither is superior. But the world is built louder than it used to be. Constant notifications, constant expectations, constant availability. For someone with a lower stimulation preference, modern life can feel like living with the volume turned up permanently. And home. Home is the mute button. Have you ever felt your entire body relax the second you closed your front door? That's not laziness. That's regulation. And here's where it gets deeper. For some people, staying home isn't just about low stimulation. It's about control. Outside, the world is unpredictable. Plans change. People cancel. Conversations get awkward. Energy shifts. But inside your own space, you decide. The lighting, the temperature, the noise. Who enters? Who doesn't? Psychological research on anxiety consistently shows that perceived control reduces stress. When you feel in control of your environment, your nervous system calms down. So when someone prefers staying home, sometimes what they're really saying is, "This is the one place I don't have to brace myself." Read that again. I don't have to brace myself. There are people walking around every day subtly bracing. Bracing for judgment. Bracing for conflict. Bracing for overstimulation. Bracing to perform. And performance is exhausting. Because that's another layer people don't talk about. Some people aren't drained by people. They're drained by performing a version of themselves that feels digestible. Smiling on cue. Laughing at the right time. Saying, "I'm good," when they're not. Mirroring energy that doesn't match their own. Home is the one place they don't have to perform. And that kind of freedom feels addictive. But here's something important. Solitude and loneliness are not the same thing. Research has shown that chosen solitude can improve creativity, emotional regulation, and problem solving. When the brain isn't reacting to external demands, it starts connecting internal dots. That's why some of your deepest thoughts show up at 2 a.m. That's why ideas hit in the shower. That's why clarity comes when everything is quiet. There's a psychological concept introduced by Donald Winnicott called the capacity to be alone. He argued that the ability to enjoy your own company is actually a sign of emotional maturity. Let that sink in. The ability to be alone without feeling abandoned is strength, not weakness. Some people stay home because their inner world is rich. They have conversations in their head that are more stimulating than small talk. They replay ideas. They analyze patterns. They build imaginary scenarios. They reflect. They don't need constant external input because their internal input is loud enough. But now we have to address the shadow side, because this is where things get real. There are two kinds of people who stay home, and from the outside, they look identical. One stays home because it brings peace. The other stays home because leaving feels heavy. The first one feels restored after solitude. The second one feels stuck. The first chooses quiet. The second fears exposure. Social anxiety can make ordinary interactions feel like threats. Depression can make simple tasks feel overwhelming. Trauma can make unpredictability feel dangerous. In those cases, home stops being a preference. It becomes a shield. And shields are useful until they become walls. So here's the question I told you we'd come back to. When you turn down plans, is it relief or is it dread? Be honest with yourself, because self-awareness is the difference between self-care and self-sabotage, and nobody online talks about that nuance. It's easier to say, I'm just an introvert. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's armor, and armor is heavy. But let's go back to the people who genuinely love staying home, the ones who feel joy in slow mornings, who look forward to canceled plans, who find comfort in routine. There's something deeply grounded about them. They don't chase noise to feel alive. They don't need an audience to validate their existence. They understand something most people learn too late. Peace is expensive, and they protect it early. Society romanticizes being out there, traveling constantly, networking constantly, posting constantly, attending constantly. But constant visibility is not the same thing as fulfillment. Some people are nourished by connection. Others are nourished by reflection. And here's the part that might surprise you. Research on sensory processing sensitivity shows that some individuals are biologically more sensitive to external stimuli. Light feels brighter. Sound feels louder. Emotions feel stronger. For them, the world genuinely hits harder. So when they choose to stay home, they're not opting out of life. They're adjusting the intensity. And that's wisdom. But let me say something that might challenge you. If you never leave your comfort zone, it shrinks. Even peace can become avoidance if it's never tested. Growth doesn't require becoming loud, but it does require expansion. So maybe the goal isn't to force yourself into chaos. Maybe it's to build a life where you can enter the world on your terms. Not as performance, not as survival, but as choice. Imagine going out because you want to, not because you feel guilty. Imagine staying home because it nourishes you, not because you're afraid. That's the balance. And balance is power. If you're someone who prefers staying home, who feels happiest in quiet spaces, who recharges alone, who loves your routines, you are not behind. You are not boring. You are not wasting your life. You are wired for depth. But depth still deserves sunlight. So here's what I want you to reflect on tonight. When you close your door and exhale, is that exhale peace or is it escape? Be honest. And if this made you feel understood in a way no one has explained before, subscribe, because in the next video, we're going to break down something even more uncomfortable. Why some people feel exhausted around certain individuals, even when they like them. And once you see it, you won't unsee it. Tell me in the comments, do you prefer staying home? Or are you starting to question why? I'll read every answer.